A husband and wife who tried to trick their daughter into marrying her cousin in Bangladesh have been imprisoned for just a few years. A husband and wife from Leeds who tried to trick their daughter into marrying her cousin in Bangladesh have been imprisoned for 4.5 years and 3.5 years, respectively. The BBC reported on this story saying, the then 18-year-old daughter had to be rescued from a remote village in an operation by the British High Commission involving armed police, the judge heard. The woman, who is from Leeds and is now aged 20, described in a victim impact statement how she had assumed a new identity and lived in fear of her family. Leeds Crown Court heard that she'd been taken to Bangladesh under the guise of it being a family holiday, but she didn't know her parents were planning on marrying her off to her first cousin. And when she found out about the plan and reacted, her dad hit her, and the mother basically encouraged that violence. But the court also heard that the father threatened to chop her up in 18 seconds if she continued rejecting the marriage proposal. Chop her up in 18 seconds. Bizarre thing to say, but it's basically a suggestion that he's going to murder her. He's going to murder her unless she marries her first cousin. That's serious stuff. And she alerted the police via her boyfriend, who was back in the UK, thankfully. And Judge Simon Phillips QC said that the records showed, the recordings, I presume, of these phone calls, her terror and distress. And no wonder, imagine going through a situation like that. Now, this is a big problem in the UK. First and second generation immigrants who are living normal Western lives are being forced to marry their own cousins and people they just don't want to marry. And by not talking about this and by not taking action on this, by not taking real action on this, the government and our politicians are putting more and more girls at risk every year. The government and all our politicians are failing young girls. They've been failing young girls for decades. Look at their record on grooming gangs and look at this now. Look at the fact that they're failing young girls who are being sent abroad to marry their own cousins. And this is a problem from a very specific section of society. You know what I'm talking about, which is why the government isn't doing all that much about this, or at least not enough. Now, the parents of a girl from Leeds who threatened to chop up their own daughter if she didn't marry her own first cousin in Bangladesh have been imprisoned, but this goes way beyond this one case. In fact, the government's forced marriage unit has said that more than 1,000 cases of forced marriage have been dealt with in the UK last year. But while the FMU has provided assistance in thousands of cases since 2012, they recognise the fact that most cases of forced marriage just aren't reported to their unit. So they've got no idea how many there are. Meaning the only way we can tackle this is by ending the acceptance of parallel societies in the UK. That's the way you stop this. We cannot accept parallel legal systems and ghettos where people live parallel and separate lives. Only a unifying British culture, which is something I talk a lot about, I know, but it can solve a lot of problems. Only a unifying British culture will keep children safe in this country, and we must stand up and say, no, this is not normal, and this is not a practice we are ever going to accept in this country. It's time we stopped importing people who hold these beliefs and believe in these values and set more of an example for people who want to try it here in the UK. We need to set an example that people who try and marry off their children abroad will not be dealt with nicely. 4.5 years in prison for threatening to kill your own daughter unless she marries her cousin. That's a joke. If you want to see more from me and the rest of the Rebel team, remember to like and subscribe.